So thank you, Ivana. My name is Houssam. My supervisors are Michael, Oswald, and Professor Julian Lee. And like Ivana said, I'm going to be focusing on modeling the architectural design process so that we can capture it in a way that we can reuse it later to inform decision making. Before I go any further into the nitty-gritty of the problem, let me introduce myself. I have a background in architecture. I had a bachelor's degree and a master's of science in architecture in Bilkent University in Turkey, where I defended my thesis in modeling self-organized settlements growth using deep reinforcement learning. So you see the relation between modeling a lot of complex systems there. And then I worked for over 5 years developing data systems for major clients in the industry, and was active in recent years in workshops and hackathons in international conferences, and lately in hackathons in Archmanu, where I got the chance to collaborate with a bunch of our industry partners. So starting from the beginnings, that was the question that was given to me by the center to start from, the top one. And I'm not gonna piggyback on any squirrels or nuts, even though that was brilliant. I'm just gonna go with a good old scenario to put you all with me in the core of the problem. So imagine you're an architect and you're tasked with designing hospital, and you have to make decisions such as choosing materials for cladding or what type of HVAC system you are going to use, where you're gonna place those systems and whatnot. So a lot of decisions that should be made. And you know that your firm has delivered 2 successful projects before that are very similar to the one that you're working on right now. But when you ask, you are told that the lead designers have already left the firm, and therefore you have no way of accessing a lot of that intelligence that the firm developed before through investment, through previous projects. And so what you do, they tell you, don't worry, because we have good databases and we're very good at that. And we have a lot of BIM models, very good, well detailed with a lot of time steps. So you will get all the information you need to inform your decisions. And so you go and look into those BIM models. But the issue is that they have a lot of data, but they are totally missing the context. A lot of the rationale behind a lot of the decisions that were made at the time are totally lost. And so if there's no context, you go and you check the database again, and you try to find the meeting minutes, the emails that were exchanged at the time to try and get that context. But those types of data are unstructured, and it'll take you a long time to go through them to get what you need. And you don't really have that time because you have to deliver and you have deadlines that you have to meet. And so the issue here is a systemic loss of knowledge that happens because we are capturing data in manners that are not helpful for reusing that data in future. And that's exactly what I'm trying to not solve, but at least understand and try to help in formulating a good solution for architectural practice. So I'll go through the status quo, why architectural practice should care about capturing that type of data, and then why we have this issue to begin with. So first, this falls under knowledge management in AC industry. And so the key drivers are for architectural practice to go and invest in this. First, there's the knowledge exodus problem. This is a lot of very experienced staff that are leaving the company, and with them goes all the tacit understanding and problem-solving ability that the company developed through its own experience. That ties to organizational learning. So the company seeks to compound its knowledge and its understanding so that they can do a project much, much better the next time around. And also it ties to the obvious gain of minimizing process waste. We don't want to do a lot of, we don't want to rework a lot of the problems that we already solved before. And also it ties to future proofing. This is about hedging the risks that these organizations have in terms of experience that was gained through investment and effort leaving quickly through the door. And so to explain this knowledge drain problem, It's closely tied to the type of work that architectural practices do. So it's project-based. A lot of the times it involves a lot of other companies and not just one. You have barriers in sharing information and saving that information in manners that get you the complete picture, because a lot of those companies sometimes are competing each other or bidding against each other in other projects. And then the type of work that architects do is mostly ad hoc and has a lot of informal steps, because the requirements are not set at the beginning and fixed. They change. The projects take years and the targets keep changing. With them, the teams have to adapt and come up with ad hoc processes that are in the middle. Most of those are lost because they're usually tacit. And there's not much, it's not much of a priority for these teams to document this process, because usually it happens in post-project reviews, which happen after the project is done and the team was disbanded and all the tacit knowledge was lost. And there's no reward for them to care about that, because they already moved to other projects, and the PPR project, post-project review becomes like a task that they should just get done and move on to the next thing. And so you end up with a poor quality and fragmented set of data that's incomplete for us to capture the whole context and data associated with it, associated to past projects. So we have tools to capture data in the industry. The most used one is BIM. There were very good advances in data interoperability and moving different modalities of data between a tool to another, but there's still a missing piece, and that is process interoperability. That means going from one process that we had previously to a new one to inform a new one that we have in the future. And so these tools are not adequately, are not suited for this type of inference. And also they fail to capture the nonlinear and socio-technical aspects of the design and the nature of architectural work. So we end up with good databases, but they are heterogeneous databases that are fragmented and sitting in silos, and we can't really reuse them. From literature review, there were two main gaps. So other people tried to solve this problem before, of course. And most of them used static and top-down models to capture this data. These are models that impose a certain schema on this process. So they assume a certain dynamic within the architectural design process, and then they capture it. But actually, projects are different. The ad hoc property of these projects makes these processes different each time, and so a top-down schema doesn't work all the time. And then there was a lot of papers and research identified that using the static data and the assets that we have that are explicit in combination with the socio-technical dynamics that happen within architectural practice are very good, but it's largely unexplored and needs more research to figure out how we can use this combination to inform data capture and process capture and then reuse in the practice. So that leads me to the proposed research. So I'm at a stage where I have a good proposal and starting to do systematic literature review. And so before we go further, the research is based on two pillars. So we see design as a socio-technical system, where the technical procedures of coming up with the assets are co-evolving with the social dynamics within architectural teams. And then it's very important, the second pillar, the bottom-up knowledge discovery. So this data should be captured while the architectural project is going forward. So that emphasizes live capture of knowledge, and it could be used retrospectively on past project data, but there is a core limitation because if the databases have missing pieces, there's no way we can get the full picture. So my research is split into three main pieces. First, understanding what architectural process is. What are the actors? What are the artifacts? What are the decisions that happen at what stages? Following a socio-technical understanding. And then the second step is about assessing existing methods. So there are a bunch of existing methods that we need to run a gap analysis on to figure out why, what are they missing, what is the gap, what are they good at, and then that leads to the final stage, which is proposing a novel computational method that will try to address some of these gaps. Oh, I moved fast. Okay, so that gives us this whole diagram where each step feeds the next step. So first we'll get an understanding of the nature of what we call the architectural design process. That will go through systematic literature review. So that's what I'm doing now. That will get us through a thematic analysis, all the patterns, socio-technical patterns that are consistent within architectural design processes. And in parallel to that, we run exploratory case studies. So for these, we're looking at getting data for past projects, BIM models, meeting minutes, all the documented data, and then having projects that are run within the last 10 minutes so that we have a higher probability of getting access to design leads and people who were there and were active in those projects so that we can run interviews and fill the gaps that are missing within the explicit data that we will get access to. And then the evaluation of the methods that will give us a gap. And then we'll go into prototyping and iteratively developing the novel computational method. And then by the end, again, another opportunity for industry partner contribution, which is the validation of the method and the iterative development of it. This could be a live capture of a current project that's going on, or using a set of past projects data. And then we run expert interviews and focus groups to assess how useful or how applicable the novel proposed workflow is. And so the expected contributions theoretically and practically of this research, other than a novel computational system, are providing a method or a way for architectural practice to mitigate the systemic knowledge loss and offer practitioners a way to gain easy access to past rationales or rationales behind past decisions. This is also good for staff that are not that experienced, and it's like an educational tool that they can use to easily understand what happened in the past in their firm and gain some more understanding of what are the best decisions to take given certain contexts. And then by the end, it helps promote organizational learning. It doesn't solve organizational learning because organizational learning, as we saw before, takes other organizational, managerial, and leadership components to it, but it helps to have a database that you can reuse to promote this kind of organizational learning. And the most obvious benefit would be reducing costly rework, because once you solve a certain problem, you have a much higher probability of resolving it with a lower cost. So that's all the implications. The task would be to just delete that expected word from this slide. If you can get there, I'll be very, very happy. Thank you very much.
Hey, two questions immediately.
So the same thing I did.
Suppose it.
Yeah, go for it.
A couple of things from me. I think this is really interesting. Have you looked at what's happening in the UK around the UK Building Safety Act 22?
No, not yet.
So that was created off the back of the Grenfell fire and the investigation that came out of the Hackett report, which was all about actually identifying where responsibility lay for certain decisions. Mm-hmm. Out of that is a mandate to have a golden digital thread on projects, which is very similar to what you're describing here. Okay. So I think it's really worth you having a look at that. The other thing is, when you talk about, I'm focusing specifically on decisions. Mm-hmm. How do you describe decisions? Like, do you need to create a taxonomy of a language about how you describe decisions so that that can be recorded with a level of consistency, so that you can look back and find out, okay, what happened and when. Because, you know, so we talked about data frameworks, data schemas and things like that. This is almost part of that. It's actually, how do you, you know, standardize how we describe these artifacts?
Okay, well, decisions, just from my background, I'm thinking of them as transitions, like changes that happen to the design. And through the first stage, I'm planning to identify the patterns. Some of those patterns are the decisions, and those will be key events that happen throughout different projects. And then identify these steps, and around them we'll get other types of transitions that we'll identify, and we need to have a system that can quickly check different time steps and detect changes, and those will be called the decisions.
Okay, so prior to this centre officially opening, some of the industry partners got together and we tried to put seed processes in place. I think there was a point where the centre was open, but it was only industry partners. There was no PhD students, and we were trying to work out what we could do. And one of the ideas was, hey, let's get a repository of a bunch of project data and build that so that when the PhD students start, they'll have something to work with.
Do you have that?
No.
No, we've been keeping it from you.
We've been holding it. Now, the thing was the hurdle that prevented us from doing that was the hard no that we got from pretty much every director that said, you can't have our data. Some people were scared off just by the project data, like as in the Revit model, and some people were horrified when emails and meeting minutes were mentioned. And I think the biggest thing that came from it was that it was a very broad and generic request. So, and this cuts, but like I know Hyun's probably not here, but it cuts back to some of the other research proposals that are looking to get access to data that people are concerned about. I think you guys need to team up and come up with a means of asking for very specific things, not very general things, that you can confidently say will be safe and anonymous for us to do the research. So
I have a question back.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. I'm not the one saying no, by the way.
Yeah, I get that. But like just thinking about it conceptually, I think the minimum I can work with is BIM models with different time steps, and then getting access to people who worked on those projects so that I can interview them and get some of that rationale.
Yep.
Do you think it's hard to get those BIM models, just the BIM models?
I think
not emails.
I think it is difficult to get it unless you have buy-in from the client.
Okay, it's client related. Okay.
And so if anything, there needs to be a bit of a task force of finding clients that have ongoing relationships with the specific industry partners, finding the right one, and then buttering them up to get them on board. Okay. And that you might end up using the same client that Hyun ends up using.
Yeah.
That's where my main concern here. What I don't want you to do is go down a pathway, and in a year's time, you're doing Hyun's presentation from this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. That's a risk, and my supervisors told me that from the beginning.
Yeah.
But worst case, it's about the applicability of the outcomes and the significance of it. I can work with simulated data, like just simulate a project.
It's not. I don't think it's worth working.
Exactly, but then the implications are not really tied to. Like, so not relevant really to industry.
And the thing, like, one of the big factors with Hyun's bite back, especially through Cox, was we described the need for accessing the data to then decide what we would do with the data. That was the scary thing. If anything, I know it's a chicken and egg situation, but if you can be hyper specific about what you're going to do with it, it might end up just being a hypothetical thing that you're going to do, hyper specific, but you get learnings from that. If that helps get you through that, then that's my recommendation with this.
Okay. I'll keep that advice in mind. But I can be specific after the systematic review. I still have time. I'll get there.
Great, really engaging. One of the things that fascinated me about your presentation, I know you gave you a couple of examples, was a lot of the things had two references very far apart in date, or quite far apart in date, at least like, 2003, 2022, something like that. And when you started talking, I thought, wow, this is like Back to the Future. This is the conversation exactly we were having in SILE in 2003. This was the big challenge, right? So what I would be interested, now you've done the work, is, there's been so much technology adoption over that period. Did you find big differences between the old reference and the new reference that you have in some of those points?
Yeah, that's, well, the early 2000s, late 90s were very strong in terms of trying to capture that process. And then it died off a little bit in the 2010s. And then it's picking up again because now there are new technologies that can handle multimodal data. So they're trying to get another stab at this problem, but the limitations are still the same. Like they're still referencing the same problems, dealing with the same issues, but using different technology now, like multi-model models. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's actually quite exciting, and the why and the what are crystal clear. The how is is quite. I think I'm just a CAD monkey, so I don't think I have a chance really to fully. But I think it has to be passive, really passive. So it mustn't have that much user input. And I think if you're really confident that this can happen, I think it's an amazing, would be an amazing achievement.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Well, the major issue about current data management, data capture tools is that they need you to change your process and go do something that you wouldn't do normally in your normal process. So it definitely needs to be passive and blending and just capture what we need to capture without interrupting the socio-technical dynamic that happens. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Definitely the topic is, concerning everyone here. But I would probably challenge you in regards to question if you actually need digital data to do that work, because you're more, like you explained already, about process management and decision-making processes.
Yeah.
So it all comes down to the human being and the end user in the process. So why not start with a series of interviews or surveys and really get to the bottom of how people work in their own environment? How do they record data? And it doesn't have to be that it's only limited to BIM, for instance. So if you Houssam, for instance, they have a project library that spans probably the whole building here. For every project, they have at least 4 or 5 A4 folders packed full of information, exactly for that point. If someone leaves the company, there's still all the essential data captured that made the decision project process available to the next one who is working on a similar project in the future. It's all old school, paper-based, but every project manager has the task at the end of the project to develop actually and to deliver this kind of information. And that's one way of capturing data, but obviously not in the modern sense or in the digital world. So the idea is really maybe think about processes that can be established in the company to capture the data for future processes and maybe for the tools that are available now or in the future.
Thank you. That's challenging my thinking a bit, because you're I was focusing on data a lot, and actually you're right, like the social part and the dynamics are what constitutes the decisions, what directs the transitions, and then the generation of the data, the artifacts. But I still need data, I think, because I need to cross-validate whatever my interviewees tell me with actual data, because sometimes they could tell me something that, that's not really correct. So I still need the hard data. Yeah, thank you.
I think just following on a bit from Sasha's point there, because I was kind of going down that line as well. I feel like emerging from this is the need for a role. I think it's a role that doesn't sit comfortably. Well, it's a responsibility that doesn't sit comfortably with any role currently in practice. The architect doesn't have time for it. Probably the closest thing is an information manager, because they're charged with consistency of data, making sure that everything is appropriately structured, stored, etc. But the closest thing that comes to my mind is an archivist, and I think to the point of Herzog, they've got an archivist who's actually curating their physical store. So does that need to be defined? And then they're charged with certain procedures, certain protocols that they need to follow on every project. And I think that almost feels like a step before you have your novel computational approach.
Yes.
Because I think if you define that, then you'll actually see where the computation is required. You're not going to have an approach that's going to do the whole thing, document every decision, because there needs to be a human to essentially tell that technology, that computation, what that decision was. Like the computation will probably say, okay, a decision was made here because there might have been a sudden left turn, but it needs to be justified, and that's done by a human. Now, does that need to be, is that a platform, or is that just someone? And so I think you need to kind of consider, that project process, again, echoing Sasha's point, and then figure out where the technology fits. I think if you're jumping straight to saying, I need technology, you can't be. I think I used the phrase yesterday for another one. It's the tail wagging the dog. You're just trying to use technology for the sake of it. I think you need to actually figure out where the technology sits comfortably.
Yes, that's good feedback. Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna now I'm thinking about it that way because of my background. Like I want to develop a thing, but in the first part, that was feedback from my supervisor as well, because at the beginning I proposed novel computational framework. So the first part was coming from feedback from him, because he told me what you're gonna produce more is like understanding what the process is and how we can capture and where the technology will go. I can't tell you specifically what that be until I get through the first part. But thank you for
just on that thread, building on what Sasha and Eddie have said, could this be done through an ethnography, or even better, with your skill set and background in autoethnography? Because then you're embedded in a project, you're contributing to it, and you can capture the decisions and the processes that are being made in real time. Yes, it's not using historic data, so that deviates a little bit from your original research question. But then you are really embedded in capturing all of the finer points that you possibly, like you said, couldn't get from interviews, because human recollection is notoriously flawed and inaccurate. So that could cover several of the points and the challenges that you may face.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, getting like live capture would be better, because I can just get them as they are produced. But that doesn't give you the ability to leverage all the experience that a lot of companies already accumulated. Like, what would happen to those? So even if I go with live, I should still find out how my process would still capture or leverage some of that past data.
The live gives you the basis of what you need to go.
The understanding. Thank you.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes. There's room for one more question.
It takes me back to the snowmelt conversations where, you know, that came up about diving into historic data. And I really love how the conversation has twisted, you know, to look at a live case, because I really think that that's going to overcome your challenges with getting access, right, to this data as well, because you are actively then having a conversation up front before the project starts to gain consent from the participants, starting with the client, which I think was a great idea, and then coming back to the employees. And that's what the University of New South Wales ethics process is going to need you to require to do as well, right? Because if you do the historic data, it's going to need to be all anonymized, and then you're not necessarily going to be able to link everything up. So I really think that there is a really strong case, and I'm happy to talk through some scenarios, because we deal with this in human resource management research all the time. We're linking performance data with turnover data, with all sorts of really highly sensitive. And if you can capture it live in a live project rather than historic, my personal experience is it's much easier to get through ethics, and therefore also much easier to get organisations on board. That's just my 2 cents from the management lab.
Oh, thank you for your feedback. It's a hurdle that I need to bypass. Yeah, and you have much more experience, so I'll go with live.
How many months are you in now?
7 months.
7 months. Okay, so there's still time before your confirmation.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Do I have time to say one thing?
You've got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay.
It's not fair. Who wants to talk?
Who wanted to talk?
If you want to ask questions, come to the front.
This might be more of an adjacent thesis adjacent comment, but as I understand, Populous interview directors when they leave, and senior members of staff to capture their knowledge. Now that's a historic thing, and they've converted all those videos into transcripts, which are timestamped, and then fed the transcript into an LLM, which is then available to staff as a knowledge base, and there may be something in that.
Oh, thank you. I'm hearing I should talk to Herzog and Demoran and Populous. They have good data.
Got the wrong end of the cards.
No.
All right. Thank you, Houssam.
Thank you.